Hey, footy fans, welcome to the Point of Difference Rugby League podcast. I'm your host, Dave, and today we're going back in the day with a Queensland and Brisbane Broncos legend, the first man to win an NRL Premiership and a Super 12 title. It's the one and only Peter Ryan. How you going, brother?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Dave. How are you?
Yeah, man, bloody awesome. So good to have you on the show. It's a lovely day down here in Christchurch. What's happening over there in sunny Queensland?
It is a beautiful day. We've just come off a week of rain, but it's perfect here today. I'm out in
Oh,
central Queensland, little town of Mara, where I work in the mining industry.
cool. So I guess that's pretty long hours and sort of, was it like 2 weeks on, 1 week off type of thing?
No, it's 7 and 7, so 7 on, 7 off. And I normally
Okay.
live on the Sunshine Coast, so it's about a 5 hour drive back home on the days off.
Mate, that's pretty rough. That's pretty rough. But do you enjoy that sort of work?
It's been good. Look, I was coaching. I was at the Queensland Reds at the time when COVID came about, and
Yeah.
Rugby Australia, well, and the Reds sort of put it out that they couldn't afford to have contract coaches available and keep paying wages. So we all had about 6 to 7 months off, and in that time frame, I was thinking to myself, okay, well, we'll just get back into work when we start again. But unfortunately, that didn't happen because Rugby Australia was running out of money quite
Okay.
quickly. And so I did a little bit of work just with a mate of mine on the Sunshine Coast, doing steel fixing and concreting and jobs like
Yeah.
that. And my poor old body, it certainly doesn't feel like that much anymore where I can get into that physical labour so much. So the job out here in the mines was a lot less physical,
Yeah.
and obviously a fair bit more money as well. And
Yeah.
looking, well, I'm on a blast crew, so we get to blow things up, which is a bit of fun
Nice.
every now and then as well.
Oh, what boy doesn't love doing that? Just blow shit up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So how are you enjoying the footy this year? Like the competition's pretty tight and Cowboys are going all right and the Broncos are sort of starting to find their feet again. What's your take on the NRL so far?
Look, I've been enjoying it, and I suppose because I'm out here, you're it's still something to look forward to while you're out at work because you're living in a camp situation.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate enough that I can just play all the games or replays of the games off my iPad that I
Nice.
have here with me, which makes life a little bit easier, and I get to catch up on it all. I watch it and then I'll catch up on it after the end of the weekend so that I can see highlights or whatever of games that I might have missed or whatever else. So it's been enjoyable. I think the Broncos have been. I think they started quite poorly, and I think Kevy gave them a little bit of a kick in the backside, so to speak, with regards to attitude and I suppose off the back of that, the players started to turn things around, and obviously they've had a few injuries as well,
Yeah.
um, with Reece Walsh and Reynolds and Payne Haas. So I think only one that's not back this weekend is Reynolds. I think
Yeah.
for this week. Um, so I think they'll be a lot better with those guys back in the team. The Cowboys, they look like they haven't done enough grunt work or groundwork in the defensive side of the game
Okay.
this since preseason or in preseason coming into the season. They're bleeding too many points. And I suppose talking about Queensland teams, the Titans and the Dolphins. Dolphins are obviously near the top of the table. Wayne has the ability to get teams up for game to game, week to week. He does keep it simplified and make things really quite easy for teams to flourish under his expertise. And I suppose poor old Desi Hazard, I feel a bit for him because I think they're probably due to finish in the top 8 or get to a top 4 or something like that, being the amount of time they've been in the competition. But um, having a team on the Gold Coast because it's such a party town, I
Yeah.
think that's a real detriment to what goes on there, and whether the players, um, you know, don't go there that don't switch on properly, or when they go there, they relax to a point where it's almost like holiday mode. I'm not sure. I don't know what the results um, are from being down there because I've never lived on the Gold Coast, but I would imagine that Desi would be pretty hardcore in terms of what he's trying to achieve. And I just hope they go a lot better this year, so they do, get an opportunity to get in the top 8. Because I think their fans and the city of Gold Coast probably deserves it.
Yeah, man. I think if they lose again to the Warriors today, you could just about put a line through them for the finals. It's just a pretty long
Yeah,
road back, 7-0.
yeah. Well, you'd probably say that, but then again, you look if they got to the end of the year and they finished just outside the 8, I reckon they'd be pretty happy with that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
As a sponsors and the guys who I suppose what do you call them, the stakeholders in the game for
Yeah.
the Titans. If they finished up midfield without being in the top 8, I think that would surpass their expectations potentially.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, look, look when it's all said and done, I don't care too much about those other teams except the Bronx, obviously.
Fair play.
Yeah, because I'm a life member at the Bronx, and and obviously absolutely adored my time and being there for the amount of time that I was there.
Yeah, man, definitely. Right, let's turn back the clock. Peter Ryan, where did you grow up and what was life like for you as a young fella and getting into footy?
Oh, look, I grew up in a little country. Well, it's not a little country town now, but it used to be a little country town of Laidley, just outside of Ipswich in the Lockyer Valley. And so we used to play in the Ipswich competition. So I was regarded as an Ipswich player because of that fact. And so growing up in my father was a butcher in the local town. We had a small cattle property just outside of town, and we obviously killed our own cattle for our meat. And so I grew up in a really fortunate situation where I've got the best of both worlds. I've got city, country, plus we've got that grounding of that being farmers and that sort of quality of person, and obviously the the hard work that that's instilled in you when you are a country boy. That's obviously part of my background, and I'm obviously very proud of that. So growing up in Ipswich competition, we had to travel to Ipswich every week, and it would be it's not a very long distance, but about half an hour, 40 minutes down and back each time. And playing in that Ipswich competition, I got to represent the Ipswich. I think they were still called the Jets as the juniors. Against against it'd be like North Brisbane, South Brisbane, Central West, and then you got Darling Downs, North Queensland, Central Queensland, teams like that. And so when you got into those competitions, obviously it was a lot more stiffer competition because of the fact of the quality of the players that were there.
Okay.
That's about the guts of it, mate, for the junior club.
So what was it that made you keep coming back and playing? Did you like the smashing people, like the fitness side of it? And I heard Tommy Raldonicus was sort of quite influential to you coming through.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he ended up being a coach of in Ipswich for the Jets, but then also he came out to Laidley and was the head coach for the Laidley A grade side.
Okay.
It was part of his contract, apparently. And to go down and to listen, because it used to be the old racetrack, so for the Laidley region, but then it was no longer a racetrack, so that the dressing rooms for the players were the old stewards' rooms for the racecourse, and so they were pretty thin walls, and you could stand outside and you could hear Tommy, even though his gravelly old voice, you could still hear it quite loudly swearing and carrying on about what was going on the field at halftime or before the game, and that really did. It gave me an impression of that I wanted to do this like forever, and I mean, obviously we can't do it forever, but you know what I mean. And so I understood. I grasped the concept of the team and the individual in the team, and then and how much fun that they had, during the game, obviously after the game as well,
Yeah. So would you say you were a bit of a natural when you were coming through, or did you like have to work your ass off? Like whereabouts were you on the pecking order in terms of
Uh,
natural ability?
as a kid, I think I was pretty natural. I'm the youngest of six kids.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and so I had two older brothers that used to flog the hell out of me when I was a young bloke. And then a heap
Yeah.
of cousins I was the youngest of all the cousins. So I used to have to try and keep up with them and then obviously compete with them on the same level.
Yeah.
And obviously got beat up many times over. Until I actually, there was a coach in Laidley. His name was Danny O'Brien. He was an old boxer, and he was one of the guys that really did teach me how to tackle properly.
Okay.
And so I do credit Danny with my tackle technique. I mean, obviously, I manufactured what I became as I got older, but Danny was the bloke who gave me the basics, and I suppose then my own family instinct about being a bit of a mongrel or have mongrel in you um,
Yeah.
made the rest of it go well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. So would you say that's what you built your game on back in that time? Like when you were becoming a player, making rep sides, is that you're like, I'm just going to be the best defender and fold guys in half?
I did. I really only came into play that sort of thing when I came into towards go to first grade. Um,
Okay.
whereas as a junior, I played nearly every position on the field from
Right.
wing to front row as I
Okay.
grew up. I started as a 5-year-old, so I had to play under eights 3 years in a row. Um,
Okay.
and I was 18 when I finished playing under eights. But uh, no, I'm only joking, obviously. But look, yeah, the at that age group, we only had teams that started at under eights there, so we had to start 3 years early. Well, I was begging my mum and dad to let me play with my brothers or my
Yeah.
next brother up, who was 2 years older than me. So I ended up they stuck me on the wing and they said if the ball gets past you, catch it and put it over the try line. And I was like, right, oh, well, that's an easiest job that I could possibly get. And from that point forward, now defensively, I was always a good defender because of that Danny O'Brien education that I got
Okay.
as a young bloke, and he was at that sort of 5, 6 year old age group where they used to. Well, nowadays they try and teach people to sit back into the tackle and what do you call it? Accept the contact to go over your shoulder.
Yes.
Whereas Danny's belief was that so that there was less chance for injury. But Danny's thought process on that was that if you're at the point stationary at the point of contact, then you are at more susceptible to contact to head, shoulder, and neck, as opposed to being proactive and going forward into contact, which then makes you the dominant force because if you hit them middle of center of gravity, obviously roughly around belly button onwards,
Yeah.
then you fold them over the shoulder. Then that way you make it a dominant contact, regardless of your size. And to attribute to that, you look at blokes like Jeff Tuvey, the way that he
Yeah.
tackled, like an
Yeah.
absolute
Unreal.
genius defender on the
Yeah.
field, and his size. And like I got sat in my ass, getting picked up by Jeff Tuvey when I was playing. I was like, what the hell? Where'd this come from? But the guy had
Yeah.
amazing technique and obviously that, good foot speed into contact.
I'll tell you what, I literally just got a phone call from Gavin Hill before we hopped online. And I said, oh, mate, because we're just sussing out the time to do our podcast together. And I said, oh, I've got Peter Ryan coming on in about 10 minutes. And he goes, oh, mate, I didn't like getting tackled by him. And the other man, he said, Jeff Toomey. So there you go. Unreal. What were the chances of
Yeah.
that?
Well, I hit Gavin Hill one day. He came forward and I went to put a decent shot on him. I went to put a decent shot on the guy and he turned his big ass around and threw it into my shoulder at the same time.
Yeah.
And my whole right side of my body went numb and I was like, oh my
Oh,
God,
wow.
I couldn't feel a thing. And so he did some damage on me as well with that big ass of his.
There you go, Gavin Hill. You need to trim down the ass. Get jogging. Oh, good stuff, man. So, how did you end up at the Brisbane Broncos? Like, what was your journey? Because I hear it's actually not the usual sort of journey to get to first grade.
No,
How
no.
did all that happen?
Listen, Well, look, I played in Ipswich and I made a few rep teams, and then I went away to boarding school and played rugby union for 2 years as well, and then ended up getting into the Australian schoolboys rugby union side. And so then it was fortunate that my sister, who she worked at the Travelodge in Brisbane, where State of Origin team, Queensland team stayed every year, right? And so every day she saw Wayne Bennett for about 6 to 8 weeks of the year. Oh, sorry, it would have been more like 4 to 5 weeks because that either one game away or 2 games away, depending on where the game State of Origin was played. And so my sister peppered Wayne Bennett about go and have a look at her little brother play footy.
Yeah.
And so he made contact with guys that obviously knew me through the Ipswich Rugby League, and then my local coach as well, and ended up signing me sight unseen as a player. I mean, I'm sure he had guys that he respected have a look at me, but so it ended up getting into the Broncos virtually via my sister and her and yeah, exactly, and her persistence in annoying the hell out of the head coach.
Shot says, oh mate, carved a career out for you. How good. So what was it like as a young fella walking into Broncos HQ, and there's like all these freaking massive names, like all the Queensland guys, Kevin Boulders, Alan Langer.
Yeah, Alf, Wally Lewis, Gene Miles, Greg Dowling, Brian Niebling, Greg Kinescu, Smoking Joe Kilroy, Brett LeMan. But I was there from end of 88, their first season. And they started in obviously in end of 87 for the 88 season.
Yes, that's right.
So I got there in end of 88 for 89, and as a 17-year-old. And so I reckon I don't think I said a word to anyone for the first 6 to 10 weeks. I just turn up to training, train, and leave. Because like all these guys were heroes of mine that had played in either State of Origin or even in the Queensland Cup back then at that time, or played for Australia. So we were so fortunate with the amount of internationals that we had, and they were such wonderful. Well, the majority of them, I shouldn't say they were all really good guys.
Yeah.
Can't really leave anyone out, you know what I mean? They were all really good guys, but they were happy to pass on information, like look after you a little bit. Oh yeah, saw you do that on the weekend. If you do this, you'll fix that up, or whatever it is.
Okay.
So they were all very giving with their time and their information. So I was really lucky, but I seriously, I don't think I said a word for about 6 to 8 weeks of being there, and then obviously you learn, or you get a bit of respect as you train hard or whatever you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there any of that hierarchy where you carry all their bags of the senior players and you're not allowed to sit there and all of that stuff? Like, how did you deal with all that?
Well, look, I was for me, it was a little bit obscure from that because even though I was contracted to the Broncos, I was, because I was only 17, I still had to play Colts in Brisbane, in the Brisbane competition for West, who was the club that was connected to the Broncos. So I was out at West I did all my pre-season at the Broncos, and then started there was a few trial games that I played in off the bench in like that first year. And then I went back out to West in Brisbane and started playing club footy week to week. And it was a funny season that year, 1989. There was a heap of injuries, state and Australia-wide, in terms of the State of Origin team and the Australian team from Queensland, that other guys then went up into those positions. And so then all these positions were left open in reserve grade and then first grade for the Bronx. So I ended up playing my first grade game for the Broncos in reserve grade on the right wing against Penrith at Penrith. Yeah. Well, I can't remember the guy, which one it was, one of the Goodwin brothers. He had longer hair and he was a big, tall, rangy looking, skinny thing. Yeah. But he hit me that hard. I did a winger in off for a tap, and he hit me that hard. I could taste blood, but there was none present in my mouth. I thought my back teeth had turned to powder.
Oh, mate, that's rough.
Yeah, and look, it just rattled my whole body. He hit me that hard. I don't know that it was that legal either. It was a minimum fair bit of forearm in it, I'd imagine.
Wow. Oh, mate, that's tough. So, how much like faster and tougher was it out there when you finally make your first grade debut, and you're out there mixing it with the big boys, and like just how much tougher is that intensity?
It's the speed of the game changes at every level. So
Yeah.
like you go from junior footy and then to club footy and then to Broncos or NRL level and then obviously state of origin. And obviously I haven't played a test, but I would imagine that would not be another step up again. Every time it stepped up, there was a step up in terms of intensity, in terms of speed of the game. And and so my first couple of games off the bench or and which they would just blood you to get in trial games and things like that. Because we used to have that pre-season competition. I think it was Tui's Cup or I can't. Yeah,
what a Panasonic Cup as well.
Yeah, Panasonic Cup, that one as well. So every year that there was young blokes got blooded in that as well. So I was fortunate enough in 1990, I got blooded in, or 90, I can't remember exactly. I played one game off the bench in 91 against Canberra at Lang Park in 90. And then 91, I started to become a little bit more regular in first grade. And so I virtually stayed with first grade all the time. And then I was with first grade from like end of 91 right through to the end of my career, obviously, at 99 at the Bronx.
Yeah, man. So let's talk about 1992. The Broncos are like the team to beat. You guys are the hottest ticket in town. You've got a real good blend of like mobile, not the biggest forwards, but like mobile guys who could smash fellas over. And probably one of the best backlines in the history of rugby league. Like it was ridiculous. You played about 13 games off the bench. You got a try and a win over the Tigers. I think it was one of your first tries in top grade. But like, how good was it? Making it, in the big time and getting over for a meat pie.
Yeah, well, look, to be honest with you, I do not even remember that day. I remember scoring a fair, but I have no recollection of that day whatsoever. And for me, like it was scoring tries, albeit like nowadays, like there's a lot more. The team comes in and jumps all over the bloke who scored the try and like. Then it was like, right, I get back on with the job. Let's get back over the half, ready for the next set of six. So it was probably not the biggest sort of cultural thing for us as a team that we did like that. And obviously in 92 and 93 and onwards from that, like we were a lot more tighter knit group, where we would, you go flying in and, cuddle blokes up and bag them, give them a pat on the backside or, whatever it is, back of the head. And but yeah, I don't even remember that try at all.
Too many knocks to the head, mate.
Yeah, you're probably right, mate. There's probably a fair chance of that going on.
Speaking of like not really leering up or anything, I don't think I ever saw Michael Hancock smile ever.
He's one of the best blokes you'll ever meet. He is such a legend of a bloke, but also as a footballer as well. He, like you could see, like he would almost wiggle about that much on the ground. I said to him one day, I thought you were having a fit.
A seizure on the ground.
Yeah. We said, right, next time he does that, let's throw him in the bath, fill it with water, and put our clothes in.
Good idea. So how incredible was it though, being part of that side? Like that was just an all-conquering, just destroyed everybody. Like you guys were untouchable that season.
Yeah, it was really good. That season, there were so many occasions where that if it wasn't Alf or it wasn't Steve Renouf or even Chris Johns or then again, I suppose off the back of that, Lazo, rolling down meters down. It was, and then I suppose that's a bit later on the other guys, but then Gavin Allen, like Jed Allen, unsuspecting, like he could hit, like he could genuinely hit that guy, and he had this offload, and in the 92 grand final, it was a 93, I can't remember. I think it was 92 grand final. He gave a pass over the top. It came off the back of someone's head and landed.
That's 92, and Langer went over.
Yeah, and Alf scored
Yep.
right off.
1992.
A team like Jed, like he was like, you sort of look at Jed and you go, look, he doesn't look much, but tell you what, he had some grunt in that body. And he probably played above his weight as well. And I suppose then you got blokes like Alan Cannon.
He's great.
Trevor Gilmister, Mark Hone, at back rowers, and then Terry Madison was lock at the time as well. Quite a very light on size of the team, because none of us were very big. Like I think Lazo was obviously the biggest. He probably would have been up to 110, 115, but the rest of us were all under 100 kilos. 90 around 90. Yeah, 95 to 100. The rest of us, and so we were mobile, and we could run teams around a bit more, because I think, and I probably based this off the back of the strength and conditioning coaches that we had at the time, and I grade strength and conditioning coaches off how nuts they are, and so we had Kelvin Giles, an absolute nutter. It was first of all, you had Brian Kenovan, who was former Rooster CEO, but he was mad as. Then you got Kelvin Giles, and then Steve Nance after Kelvin, and then Craig Bellamy after Nancy, and then you had Dean Benton after that. So every year we won grand finals. I reckon we were probably the fittest team in the competition.
For sure. Back then, you only had the two guys on the bench, and it wasn't this unlimited interchange. So being slightly more mobile and fitter must have worked in your favour, especially with all the attacking weapons you had in the side.
Yeah, and look, I think though, with that having only the two on the bench, you could sit half your reserve grade team on your bench if you wanted to, but you could only use 4, right? So you could use your fresh reserves and 2 backup reserves. And so the games that I played in that year, I would either at the start of that year, anyway, 92, I was playing reserve grade and then stepping up and then going on off the bench.
Mate, that's tough.
Oh yeah, but you probably wouldn't play. You probably wouldn't have played a full first grade game either back then. A reserve grade game. You would would have been sort of 40 to 60 minutes. But still, you get on the field and you don't normally. Well, as the second reserve, we used to get I think it was like $50 a minute.
Really?
Yeah, so like first grade, we used to get paid. Every player got, I think it was $792 cash in their hand. And so before tax, it was like $1,200 each. Before tax, and so every player. So that's when they decided, Ryno, we're going to make it. Everyone gets the same amount of money across the board, even if you don't get on the field. And then the guys who weren't fresh reserves, they got $50 a minute. So, obviously they wouldn't let you play too long. So you would only get about 15 minutes max because it cost them too much time.
That's unbelievable. Oh, good. Didn't know that. It's really cool. So what about you guys who finished top of the ladder? You're minor premiers. You've blown everyone away. You're red hot favourites to win the comp. You find yourselves in the grand final against the Dragons. So what was it like? Like, because you didn't play in the grand final, did you?
No, I didn't get on the field.
But so you were on one of those reserves for the grand final.
Yeah, that's right. So I got dressed. I'm fully kitted out. And I think the reason behind that, and Wayne said it to me later on, was that he had Tony Curry, who was a senior player and on his last year at the Broncos, or he was going to retire. And, you sort of look at it, I'm looking at it from my point of view going, no way, I want to get on the field. Don't stick somebody else on. I'm getting on the field. But then you look at the end of the day and you sort of go, Tony Curry had played a long period of time, won a grand final with the Bulldogs, and then played State of Origin, played for Australia, and he was a wonderful player and a good advocate for rugby league, and an Indigenous guy as well too. On top of that, I thoroughly understood as I got older why Wayne put Tony Curry on at the back end of the game and left a couple of us young off. Because we were still kids at the time. Getting on, we might have jumped in and stuffed something up and given away points, or lost the game potentially. I don't know, but so that's the story behind that. So he wanted to get Tony Curry field. Yeah.
Okay, so that aside, what was the build-up like though? The preparation, the anticipation, your first grand final for the Broncos, must have been massive.
Oh, it was huge. It was huge. And the week of the last 2 weeks leading up, so I think it was the major semi and then straight in. I think we had only played the 2 games, whatever it was, to get into the grand final. We did it quite easily. And in time frame, that 2 weeks while we're training, the crowds that turned up at our training facility around the old Red Hill Oval, that it was huge. There was maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing, but 5,000 to 10,000 at a guess. There might have been 2,000, I don't know, but I'm saying it felt like there was a lot of people there. So anywhere between sort of 2.5 to sort of 5.5 or 10,000 people at a training session. Crazy. So you'd have to fight a way to get from the training room to the field, and then eventually they started putting in staff to hold people back so that we could get out into the field without having to do signatures and all that sort of stuff before. Yeah, so it was a lot of people around. It was exciting to the point where I'd go home and then wake up in the middle of the night and have butterflies in your stomach, thinking about going to training the next day, not about the game, training. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah. So as a young guy, it was a really, really exciting time.
I bet, man. One of the biggest games ever. Because the Broncos was their first ever final, and they definitely were the team that was in the box seat to win. But so the Broncos ran out, scored a first try, but then Ricky Walford scored a beautiful try to reply for the Dragons. That's one of the great tries as well.
Yeah, it was
a little forgotten, but that was a good try. But then you guys blitzed them in the second half. But what about, where were you when Steve Renouf made that break? Because I think it's Willie Kahn got it out of the in goal, and then Kevin Walters shoved Kieran out of the way and then just spread it wide, and then Renouf took off. Where were you cheering him home? What was that like?
I'm still on the bench, obviously on the sideline at the old Sydney Football Stadium, right? And so when he breaks the line, all of us are thinking there's no chance in hell anyone's going to catch this guy. So we're actually jumping out of our seats, watching Pearl. He was right on that sideline. Him go past us to score that try down the other end. Obviously we're losing it on the sideline, and then the massive thing about it was to get back to the Brisbane airport afterwards. The Brisbane airport was full. It was absolutely chock-a-block full of people that wanted to watch or get touch of someone, or I don't know, get a photo or signature of someone coming back through. And we went straight from the plane down through the crowd, out into a bus, and then straight back to the clubhouse, which was the field. You could not see a piece of grass. There was that many people on the field. And that was when Alf got crowd surfed across and about 50 meters away, and then got crowd surfed back to the stage, and he virtually came back with no shoes, no belt, and part of his shirt missing because people were tearing pieces of clothing off the guy.
Oh, how good's that? How good. So another one I want to mention in the grand final was Alan Cann. He scored 2 amazing tries, just strength, size. He put on a step, gets over for 2. I remember the footage so well. I've seen it a million times. Kevin Walters getting in there, the big hug. You know the game's over. You guys had it, and you guys were unstoppable. What a day.
Well, and Kearney, after that season, Kearney, I think I don't know whether he had many injuries, but more so after 93, but 94 onwards, Kearney sort of dropped off a bit of, whether he had injuries or whatever. And then next thing he went down to Adelaide Rams in that Super League year. And then basically after that, he sort of gave up the ghost really, and then retired and he went into business down in Brisbane somewhere. I can't remember. Oh, I think it was a carpeting business, to be honest. I think he had two of them. And I said, did quite well out of business as well. I mean, I used to see him now, like his body shape, like seriously, he's like a stick. He's like that. Like
really,
he's trained himself down to the point where he's lean and like probably 30 kilos, maybe 20 kilos lighter than what he was.
He was a unit.
I hadn't seen him in years, and I saw him last year, and I was like, oh my God, I thought he might have been sick. But in actual fact, he's fit and healthy.
I just wanted to point him out because I think, back rower getting 2 tries in the GF is pretty special. It's pretty special. And it was they were great tries too.
What about that sidestep off his right and his left, actually, but more so off his left, I think. And he came back in, and then when he scored went over that try, just the exuberation and the excitement in their eyes. Like, I even look at it now and I still get chills up my spine, because there we are watching the same thing again, and it still does the same feeling that it gave me, what is that? How many years ago? God, what, 30?
Yeah, man. Exactly. That's how I feel when the run-off try's happening and Walford's chasing. The commentator goes, Walford doesn't get him, and then run-off falls over the line. It's unreal. I just love it.
That was amazing. And I thought Mick was going to choke him out because Pearl's arm was stuck across his neck. And Mick squeezing him that hard, I thought he was going to choke him out.
Oh, one of the great tries, man. One of the great tries.
I probably remiss of me not to mention Ricky Walford. Like, what a wonderful player he was. Like,
man.
And so consistent over so many years. It'd be remiss of me not to say something positive about the guy.
Oh, mate, he was unbelievable, through that whole era. Dragons were a much better side for having him, let's be honest. So then you guys flew off to the World Club Challenge. You were selected to go and play off the bench against Wigan. So you've got the glamour club of the UK, you've got the glamour club of the New South Wales Rugby League going head to head. You're still only a young ass fella. You're going to a World Club Challenge on the other side of the world, mate. What's that experience like? How big was that for you?
It was surreal. Like, I didn't feel like that I was, supposed to be there, to be honest. But at the time, the Broncos as a team, they said, righto, we're going to take our wives over with us. And my wives and girlfriends, I think it was my girlfriend, my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time, over with us. And so we got to tour with our partners and see parts of the world. Like, I think we stopped at Singapore for a couple of days on the way over, and then when we travelled around, we got our own room each, and obviously we're not bunked in with your old roommates. You bunked in with your wife or partner, and it was a pretty amazing tour, really. We got to see a fair bit of the country. And look, I struggle with that one. A bloke by the name of Martin Dermott was a hooker in that team, and I did a charge down of their kicker and ended up knocking him over. And as I'm running back, this Martin Dermott came back and just king hit me from behind, and dropped me and put me out. So I have no memory of that game whatsoever. I have, I remember getting to the ground and being in their very lush change rooms, albeit small, but they were really lush because they were all wood lined, like it was some sort of cedar or oak or something. But it was an amazing smell and amazing experience to go into them. But that's the last thing I remember. And then obviously I do remember parts of the trip, obviously, from that amount of time ago.
That's crazy. But the cool thing is you guys got the win. But I want to read out some of the names of the players that you guys were coming up against so people understand how massive it was to beat Wigan at home. Martin Offiah, Jason Robinson were the wingers. Dean Bell, Andrew Farrer, Ryno Boddicker, Andy Platt, Dennis Betts, just to name a few
Yeah,
British superstar players in their lineup. Like I could have named more, but that's unreal, man.
yeah, they were a rock star team, and
Yeah,
they were touted to win that game, and put numbers on us. And I look, we'd had a massive, like, 7 days basically of drinking after the '92 grand final,
damn right.
and like we had, it was expected that you turned up to the clubhouse at 10 o'clock in the next morning, between 10 and 12, because then we do something after midday, like go somewhere, do something,
Yeah,
after midday, because that was what our expectation was, that everyone was going to turn back up. And it started to get a little bit light on at the end of the week, but for the first 5 days at least, there was, the majority of the team was there at 10 o'clock in the morning, back at the club,
yeah,
Broncos club, to go and party on again. And then we only had, I think we only had about 10 days after that period where we had to then get ourselves back into training, and then get over to England. It might have been 2 weeks, but it wasn't a great deal of time to get over to England, and then obviously play, and then win. Yeah, so look, yeah, it was an amazing thing, and I remember watching it later on when I got back, and the commentators were just over the top.
yeah,
So exciting for me, because here I am on the field. I'm actually watching what I thought I had no memory of,
yeah.
and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a fantastic experience.
Yeah, man, it's unbelievable. You guys got the win, and then you roll into 1993, and the Broncos had a bit more of a bumpy year. Like, what was the hangover like from the 1992? Like the heights of that. Was it hard to get up again for 93?
Not for me, because look, I didn't play in the grand final, so for me
Yeah,
it was simple. I was just going to get back in and go hard again.
yeah,
But I noticed I probably didn't notice it at the time, but I noticed it later on around mid-season. We'd lost games by bigger points, and it was like some of the guys probably just took the foot off the pedal a bit.
yeah,
Um, and like even not so much Alf, because Alf was Alf. Like
yeah.
every time
I've heard the stories.
Wayne used to call him the money man, and probably because he made the most, but also he deserved the most, because the guy could change a game in a heartbeat,
You could.
off the back of, and one of the smallest individuals. Like if he was in the opposite team to me, I would have spent majority of my time trying to beat him up.
Yep, for sure.
That's it. And so, yeah, so that's the mindset for most of the teams. They were running big numbers at Alf,
Yeah,
and so when I started to come into first grade, which is probably a bit more in '93, but more so from '93 onwards, to '97, '98, where I ended up being the four defender inside Alf, and
yeah,
so the amount of extra work that created for me was insurmountable. Because
yeah.
when I first started playing first grade, I ended up doing, maybe 30 to 40 tackles a game. And then as
Wow.
my career got on, it was, as I got to the end of my career, it was like between, maybe 25 and 30 sort of
Okay.
tackles. Because then guys recognize the fact that if you can hit, that, right, I don't go down that channel. You know what I mean?
Run it for your ride.
Yeah. So then Alf got a little bit less work, hopefully, from my presence, and I
Right.
know that times the teams got to him, they held me up and they got to Alf. But if I got the opportunity while Alf was trying to wrestle with them, I'd stick it into their ribs. They certainly knew about it as well. We were a pretty good team.
Oh,
I used to try and I'd be saying to him, Alf, don't come out of the line, get in the line, you clown. He'd be always trying to get out of the line. And because he was, worried about taking that early contact, right? And they were big
yeah.
guys running at him, well bigger than
Oh,
me.
crazy, crazy. So you guys, you did manage to scrape into fifth place. You've had a really nice, consistent season, getting plenty of first grade. But then you're finally selected to play in the finals as well against Manly. You guys got the job done, and you guys are on that trajectory to, making the grand final again. And you went up against the Green Machine as well. You got the job done against Mal Meninga's Green Machine. Absolutely unbelievable. What was it like coming up against those sides on the way to the grand final?
Yeah, look, my memory of it, of a Manly game, and it wasn't that long ago that I ended up watching 5 or 10 minutes of it again. I was fortunate enough to score a try against Canberra.
Nice.
And in that game, Mel was playing in that game, and I was on the left side of the field. I was sorry, on the right side of the field, but I ended up getting caught in a marker a couple of times going across the field. And I remember Mel he got a hit up coming out of their end of the field, and I remember hitting him. I seriously hit him with everything bar the kitchen sink, and he deviated slightly sideways, and then he thanked God, Alan Campbell behind me and followed me up, and then bounced him, and we both put him into touch. And so we got a ball back out of that, and I vividly remember that it was the try obviously was 1 point, but then that tackle on Mel. Like Mel was a bit of a god in the game, and he was such a massive being. And for us to me and Kenny to put him in two lightweights, put him into touch was pretty good. So that was an exciting point. I remember the Manly game. Part of the Manly game is that there was like Nick Kosef. I can't remember the other guy, Gardner. I don't remember his first name. Then you got Beaver.
Daniel Gardner.
Daniel Gardner, yeah. And then Beaver in the lock position. So they had a really good back row. And every time I played those guys, I really wanted to step up to be as good as those guys were, if not better. And so that was always a tough tussle in those times because of the fact that you're coming up against good players every week. But when you got those guys that they were all nearly playing for New South Wales at that time, and they were a high quality team with Cliffy as their six, and Jeff Tuvey doing his thing back then as well, So they had a wonderful forward pack, and so we always, because our back row, we wanted to match their back row. So it was always a good tussle, those games, and obviously we got one over them that week, and then obviously into the Raiders the next. And as I said about the Raiders, that was such an exciting game for myself. But exciting to then obviously get into the grand final this year I'm getting on the field.
Yeah, man. Well, you actually had to get through the Bulldogs first. You guys were down at half time. The Doggies were a great side in the 90s as well. Like, they were all the 80s and 90s, to be fair. But you guys managed to pull it out of the bag and knock them over 23-16. And Peter Ryan on his way to a GF. Like, how good's that feeling? You must have been so happy.
It's almost like, because of the year before, it was almost like a weight being lifted off my shoulders, because I walked around with this bit of, a little bit of attitude about myself because I didn't get on the field the year before. Yeah. And even in 93, though, I suppose I didn't get much time on the field, albeit I did get on the field, though. I can't remember how many minutes it was, but it wasn't a great deal, maybe 10 or 15 or something like that. But I had this bit of a thing where I had a bit of attitude about, not getting on the field the year before and making sure I got on the field this year. And I'm walking up and down the sideline. I'm going to the team manager. I'm going, is he getting me on? Is he, come on, man? What's he going? Right. What's he like? And this guy's going, shut up and leave me alone. As a team manager, and I'm not stopping at all. I'm like, no, get on the radio. I want to know, when are we getting me on? And so he's getting peppered by me on the sideline. And then obviously to get onto the field, I think I got on the field, and I think my first tackle I completely missed. And I was that excited to get on the field and just completely stuffed it up and tripped over my own feet. And then obviously I settled down and got into the game, but there was nothing overly eventful in that grand final.
Not really, eh?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a game that had those massive big moments in them, like the year before with Canny and Pearl scoring those tries, and obviously Jed Allen doing that pass off the back of the head of someone. Yeah, so it didn't really have those big moments, but for us, well, funnily enough, I hope Chris Johns doesn't mind me telling you this, but he put at the start of that week, because we could bet on ourselves back then.
Yeah.
You couldn't bet against yourself, but you could bet on your team to win week to week. So we came from 5th spot, and he put $5,000 on us at 4-1 to win the grand.
So he did well out of that.
Yeah, so he went out of the grand final.
Didn't he score a try as well?
Yeah, Johnsy did in the second one.
Yeah.
He scored. Yeah, here's one of the most amazing players, Chris Johns. My belief is that he was one of the best defensive centers in the game for a long period of time, and then Stephen ended up coming up to the same sort of quality as Chris, off the back of probably Chris's tutelage and and the quality of the guy that Pearl was as well.
Yeah, too bad he was a New South Welshman, eh? No.
Yeah, it is true, but I still loved him, mate. We spilt blood, sweat, and tears together. So I love him as a brother. But that's all there is to it. You can't help him.
Yeah, man. So just how good was it? The final whistle goes. The Broncos have become the first ever team to win from 5th place on the ladder. It's never been done before. Peter Ryan's got his first grand final premiership. How good is it, man? How good is it?
There's no other feeling. I wish that I could, like, when I see that now, or when I see a grand final now, if I could pass on that feeling to someone else, you can't. You couldn't possibly understand how amazing that feels to actually finish the game and still be standing, but then also have won it, and then the relief behind winning it for one, but then the excitement of I just won a grand final with the Brisbane Broncos, and
man.
There's to be honest, I cannot explain it to you, and I wish that everybody in the world could feel that feeling. I wish they could. There's nothing. Well, I suppose the birth of my children was probably as close as that would ever get. The excitement, you're obviously worried, but you have that excitement of that's going on, and every detail of it is even though they're minute. Like, I remember going back to the clubhouse that night, and some of the funny things that players were saying and doing that night just had me in stitches. That I don't really remember them, but I remember how funny and stupid it was. But everything was, we loved everything. Everything was so exciting. Everything was so wonderful. Yeah, it was fantastic, mate.
It's the camaraderie as well. Like, you've achieved a sporting thing, but you did it with your mates, your blood, sweat, and tears. You did it all together. I mean, that's probably that realization of, we did it, boys. We did it.
It is. And look, you think about the amount of hard work that goes into from pre-season all the way through, but it's not just one pre-season. It's the pre-seasons before that. Like for all those guys there, from like when I started in '89. That or end of '88, that pre-season through to when we won it in '93, all of that is paid for by getting to where we were that day, and then obviously taking it to that level and then maintaining it as a club for such a longer period of time. It was a wonderful life, that's for sure.
Absolutely. It was actually just one of those great periods of rugby league, because you had Canberra win 89 and 90, and they were just red hot. And then Penrith sort of popped out of nowhere as well. They were hot for a few years around the same time. And then you guys came along, and then sort of the Bulldogs and Manly had their next little run of just unreal, man. Just such a great, some legends unearthed in the game in that time, like absolute legends. Crazy.
That Canberra Raiders Steve Jackson try. Like, what about that game at Balmain? Like
89 grand final. Crazy. Crazy.
That was look, I seriously, I lifted out of my chair. we're all. I think we were all over at Alf's place. I think we all
Wow.
watched, and actually no, I think it was 91. We watched all together when Royce Simmons scored.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
And
yep. That was off the little grubber kick from the dropout,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
put
good.
that court side. Yeah, it was amazing.
So
But
good.
anyway, I digress.
Oh, that's what podcasts are all about, digressing. Okay, 94, 94. You had a pretty interesting season. Broncos scraped their way to fifth again. You were moved from the bench to lock, back to the bench, played a bit of second row. Did it ever frustrate you that you didn't just cement down one team, or were you happy just doing your job wherever Wayne put you?
Well, you look at the quality of the players that I was in that team with. It's for me to have started or come off the bench, it didn't make any difference to me. I was still getting 40 plus minutes most games. And then when I actually did cement myself into first grade, I ended up playing 80-minute games. And, off the back of that fitness side of things. And once you get that fitness right, and I suppose I really started. So probably to digress it back a bit, but when I was at the Broncos, first start at the Broncos, I struggled through those first couple of years, fitness wise, and I just said to myself one day, I was just like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not coming back and be struggling through sessions. I want to be the guy that's in the front of these shuttle runs. I want to be the guy who's getting off the ground first. So I spent I had a week off after the season finished, and then for those 3 years before I got into first grade, I trained every day, whether it was weights or running or whatever it was, boxing or all these other different kinds of things to change it up, even swimming to a point and do that hypoxia training of, holding your breath underwater for longer periods of time. And then obviously, so you do a lot of different things of trying to achieve, certain aspects of your game. Excuse me. And so those 3 years before I got into first grade, like I had no preseason, off season. It was all work all the way through. And I was talking to Brad Thorne when we were coaching at the Reds, and even Thorny was saying to me then, he was saying, look, I don't know a player that has made first grade that hasn't trained by themselves to be better in some aspect of their game. And the big part of that is if you get the fitness component right in your game, obviously your skill level is that much higher for that much longer because of the fact that you can maintain that skill level. Your effort on top of effort, your accountability to your teammates, and then your will to not let that space open up. And I suppose that's where that defensive side of the game came in for me. And I don't know whether Wayne instilled that in me or not, but I certainly had the impression that if I was good defensively, my attack game would come along for the ride as I started to progress through my career. So I was never worried about the attack side of things because, if I, look, in my first couple of games in first grade, seriously, there was times there I missed 5 or 6 tackles. But as Wayne said to me at the time was, I understand why you're missing them because you're trying to kill everyone. And and when you try and bash everyone on every tackle, you're going to slip off, you're going to bounce off them, or, you're going to not be perfect every time. So his mindset, and I suppose my mindset changed over that time frame as well, was that let's be more subjective about when I do actually go to put a good shot on someone. It had to be a little bit more specific and more detailed. And obviously, it did pave its way for some really good shots over the years. And I was fortunate enough. That was one of the things that I really did find I thought I was really happy about, as I was voted by the players over 2 years. I think it was 97, 98 or 96, 97 as the biggest hitter in NRL. And there were so many big hitters back then. You had Cement Gillespie and like even Peter Johnson from Illawarra. Like seriously, that guy, he hit me one day and seriously, it was like that Goodwin hit. I tasted blood, but there was none in my mouth.
Was that rugby league week players poll?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I love that. That was so good. So I
yeah,
missed that rugby league week. Hey, bring it
yeah.
back. Bring it back.
Yeah, I wish they'd bring it back because we all used to we all used to read it, but we always used to read the other one more, the program one.
Okay, the big league week.
Yeah, yeah, big league week because it was at every game as a program for every game.
Yes, yeah, it's
So,
big league week. Yeah, that's the one.
or no, it came out on the Wednesday after the teams were named on the Tuesday.
Yeah. Good times, good times. You know, the lady at the post office where I lived in Hamilton, I was only like, I don't know, 10, 11 years old, and I'd do my paper run and I'd save my little $5 every week. And she'd always have one coffee ordered just for me, and she'd have it ready for me every week on a Thursday. I used to love it, eh? All the posters, everything, had them all on the walls. Not a space of room on my walls that was covered in posters and the ceiling. My poor parents. League mad.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good on you. Look, that's just show how much passion you have for the game, mate.
Yeah, man, I love it. I just love it. Right, 1994. You made the playoffs. You played Manly, and you scored a try. Do you remember this one? Playing in the playoffs in 1994, and you knocked over Manly 16-4.
I can't remember that try. I do remember I do remember scoring, but I do not remember the try. I think I got a short ball of Kevy.
Okay, crashed over for a good one.
Yeah, I don't know if it was. I think it was like a little flick pass or something. Like, and I was just lucky to catch the bloody thing and fall over the try line. I think it was something like that. But yeah, I don't really have a good memory of it.
That's okay. You guys got the win, and then you went off to play North Sydney Bears, who were another team that were great during those 90s. You know, you had your Greg
Yeah,
Florinos, Gary Larsons, Jason Taylors, and it was Jason Taylor. It was one of those great matches of the 90s in the finals that came down to a field goal. And unfortunately, you guys were on the receiving end of it with Jason Taylor snapping the winner. And 15-14, if you remember that game at all, that was an absolute beauty of a match.
yeah. Well, there was my job every time we played against Jason Taylor was to try and put him off his game a bit.
Yeah.
And so I felt sorry for him a couple of times where I just end up peppering him all day. I'll be back in a minute soon, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
What
Oh, great.
I don't know whether he remembers that though, because I'm sure I yelled it in his face once or twice.
I'll have to get him on and ask him. No.
But that for I think that game, and I remember that game quite well. I actually remember getting an offload to Kevy, and he scored in that game.
Okay.
It was down the southern end of the SFS stadium, football stadium. Yeah, yeah, I do remember that a little bit of it. But that team, as I said to you, I think there's a little bit like when some of the teams started to drop off.
Yeah.
92, 93. Some of the boys have started to drop off a little bit of intensity in terms of their training, and then I didn't really click onto it much until about towards that end of that year, and then it was a little worse at the start of the next year as well. I think we lost a few at the start of the next year in 95, 95, sorry. But I still had the same intensity for me. Like from my point of view, I felt that I was still playing really good footy at that time, and like I remember I dropped the ball. We played Newcastle in Newcastle, and I dropped the ball, and I was so annoyed at myself. And so I was in 5 tackles after that drop ball. I was in the next 5 tackles in a row because I didn't want somebody else to have to make a tackle that was caused by me. So I made sure that I got in every tackle that was available after that drop ball. And and I remember one of the players coming saying to me after the game, really respected you making a difference after you dropped the ball in. And that you had that bit more of a buy-in for me for as a team member. I'm accepted and I'm a part of this team, and these guys respect me for my work ethic and my attitude. So yeah, it was a really good thing.
Right. 1995. This is a massive one for the Kiwi fans out here. You guys are selected to play the Warriors. Like the ARL's come around. The Warriors are the new hottest ticket in New Zealand. honestly, it was crazy over here. And I was only 11 years old. Um, so you're selected to play, and I've had Hytro Cassini on the show, and he was, starting prop against you guys that night for the Warriors. And I've heard the story from his side of the fence. What was it like being in the Broncos team to fly over to New Zealand against 30,000 screaming Kiwis at Ericsson Stadium? Like, what's the talk from the Broncos camp? How did that go down?
It was like, we were excited to obviously to be part of that first game anyway, but the big part of that game was the unknown factor of what we were coming up against.
Yeah.
So basically, it was just a Kiwi team. Basically the Kiwi international team. I mean, and the front rower, the guy he'd drop his head and he'd just steamroll through teams. Was he in that team? I can't remember if he was in that team.
I'm sure that's Hytro Cassini you're talking about.
Yeah,
the big mullet. Yeah. He's the one I had on the show. Yeah.
Yeah. That guy on that game, it took me that first game to work him out. Like, and I said to Wayne, I said that front rower, because Wayne was, at that time was still sticking me in the middle as a middle defender. So you got left, right, and middle. And so and I would change between middle and right defender, right forward defender, just to give me a break out of the middle, because you got those big bodies down through there, and I was only about 95 kilos. So that guy, as I said to Wayne, is that guy. I'm sorry, what was his name again?
Hytro Cassini.
Hytro, right.
Yeah.
He steamrolled over a few guys in that game, and like made really big meters, like 10 to 15 meters out of a just a hit up run, because the body shape, and then he'd just drop his head, so you couldn't really fly because he would you'd have to get right underneath him, right? And you got underneath him down low, you cut him off, and then it's all over, right? But and I said to Wayne when we played him later in the year, I said I've got this guy sorted out. I said so, and on his first, it might have been his second hit up, I got him, and he went from running and onto his back, and it was a bit of a eye-opening moment for me, because I changed a little bit of my technique to produce something that would, to get to what this guy was doing. And I really did have to work on. Oh, sorry, I've got my thumb over it again. I have to work on my flexibility, because I used to hit a little bit higher, but just on ball. So, and that's where I found that my biggest bang for buck was in that space. But for him, I had to get down really low, drop my height, and then come back up through under the ball. So, and it ended up being a bit of a hook position, because I'm under the ball, which then shoves him backwards, and then end up getting him on his back. And so I only ever got one decent good shot on the guy, but because he was a wonderful player, and he was a solid woman, and some big ins.
He actually converted from hooker to prop for that season. So he was a bit shorter. So that's why he was probably a little bit tougher to tackle with the front row.
Yeah, that's right. But that game itself, though, it was exciting. They were in front of us at periods in the game.
Yeah, they've got your number.
What's that?
They had your number. You were down like 22-10 or something, with not long to go. And then, like you said earlier, Alan Langer, he can produce something out of nothing, and he scored 2 tries to field goal.
Did he score 2? Oh,
yep, 2 tries.
2 tries in that game. Yeah, it was an exciting game. And look, I remember the wing. I can't remember the winger's name. Oh, sorry, not the winger. It was the back rower. He was a big tall guy. I went to tackle him, and my arm came around, and like I just swung it around him, and it, obviously I didn't mean it, but I hit him dead across the mouth, and I split him from his mouth, like about may have been 2 or 3 centimeters up through his full lip. His lip was just flapping about. It looked pretty gross, and I said to the guy as I got up, I went, "I'm so sorry, mate," and I apologized to him right there and then on the spot, because I obviously didn't mean it, but I just remembered copping him right in the mouth. It would have hurt hell, yeah.
It might have been Martin Moana. I think he might have been off the bench that day. Oh, I'd have to have a look.
He ended up playing for New Zealand later on.
Okay.
He was only he came off the bench that time in Brisbane. I think it might have been his first game or one of his first
Okay.
games.
Yeah, pretty awesome game though. It's one that all Kiwi fans are just still like. If they ever watch the highlights, we're always gutted because we had the game. Like it was over, and
Oh
then bloody hell, and Langer killed us.
yeah, well Alf was the man, and like thank God for his efforts. Otherwise, we'd been going home with our tail between our legs.
Yeah, man. What was the atmosphere like out there? Like being on the receiving end of the Kiwi crowd.
Yeah, well, we warmed up on that far corner of field over the other side, and
Yep.
and the home team actually no, we warmed up over there, and then we came back, and we came out the normal tunnel, and they came out the tunnel that we came out of from the other side, and just remember that pardon me, the beating drums coming out, and when I got into the field, the beating drums were that loud, and the crowd was that loud. It felt like a grand final again. Like the sound, it was enormous. The decibels in terms of the crowd aura was fantastic, and you could see that they were up for it as well. I mean, they had Greg Alexander as halfback, and
Yeah.
played a great game, and so Dennis Betts was playing at the same time, I think too. Dennis played well as well.
Yeah, he's a beast. Phil Blake, he was at fullback.
Oh, that's right. He scored a try too, I think.
He did. Got the first try of Warriors history and NRL history, so pretty unreal. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Stephen Kearney, he was at back row, so you would have been marking up against him somewhere.
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah, man. Unreal. What a game. And you guys got the chocolates. So 1995, the Super League bomb was dropped on the ARL.
Yeah.
So, clubs are being fought over by both sides. You've got, players trying to be signed up on mental money. What was your journey personally? And like also what was it like being at the Broncos, who are obviously wanting to be signed by both sides? How did all that shake out for you?
Yeah, we had to. There was a meeting over at the CEO's house with all first grade squad guys, and so John Rebo was the CEO obviously at the time. Reeves played for. I don't know. Do you know Reeves at all? Like Reeves played for Redcliffe in Brisbane, and then played for Manly in Sydney, and then West before that. And he went down and played for West first. Wonderful winger, like big style second. Winger. And yeah, wonderful player in the NRL back in his day. So, but a great guy too. Really, his business acumen was right up there. His understanding of business was fantastic, and a true gentleman to deal with as a CEO as well. But it was over at his place, and obviously he was one of the. I think he might have been one of the instigators of Super League, and coming into contact with Rupert Murdoch. Oh, sorry, Lachlan Murdoch more so than Rupert. And they were the instigators of it. And then Chris Johns was a big part of that as well at the time. And I remember that. And so Porky Morgan was our CEO. Our chairman of the board, one of the owners.
Yeah.
We had this meeting over at Reeves' place, and they threw out some numbers, and all of us were sort of like, oh, that's amazing. Like we're going to be able to play football professionally, totally professionally until that point. You'd come in on 2 days of the week, you'd go to training in the morning and you'd do a weight skills session. And then in the afternoon, after work, you'd come back and you do your full team sessions and that after work. And so you still had to work, 5 days a week. And that was tough, doing that and trying to maintain weight or lose weight or whatever it was for guys in those positions. So when we started to go professionally, full-time professional, the club expected us to be at the club for 8 hours a day. And we're all like, what are we going to do for 8 hours?
A lot of time.
Yeah, that's right. But, we ended up filling our time really well because ended up started doing a lot more vision, understanding opposition teams, and then obviously just your extra training or doing extra sessions, going for meals together. It created a lot better bond as well. I think the whole first grade community was just a, it was just a really enjoyable time to be around.
Yeah.
And look, to be honest with you, I'm so glad that there's everyone, bags of Super League year and era and all that sort of stuff. But I can't thank it enough, because it made it possible for us to play sport professionally, as professional sports people do around the world. And up the ante in terms of facilities, in terms of playing and obviously training facilities. It upped the ante in terms of player welfare. We had a what do you call it? The players' agreement with the NRL, as it became known. It was obviously New South Wales Rugby League at the time, and then Super League came in, and it was Super League, and then back to NRL, right? So I think it paved a massive way for what the guys are doing now and what they're receiving now. You look at a first grader now, and decent back rowers are making between 400 and 800 or 900,000 a year.
Crazy,
I wish I was playing now, mate.
Never mind $50 a minute. Crazy. So was there much was there much of an effect on the player group when it came to actually playing that season? So you guys finished third on the ladder, but you bowed out in the finals again.
In 96, yeah.
Yeah.
96, 97, we had a massive year. Influx of players that were coming through, younger guys that were coming into the team. And I think that really did give the place energy. And for me, like, I was still cruising along from the same way I was from 92, obviously, to 96. And look, I can't remember the back end of the year. I don't even know who we lost to go out in the finals. But do you have that information?
1996. I think you went out to North Sydney and Cronulla.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So I don't. Yeah, my memory escapes me. As I said, too many head knocks. But that time frame, there was young guys coming in, and it was really quite exciting going into from 96 to 97. Because of that, and that created a new energy amongst the group. And we used to, not every year we did them, but a few years we did these preseason camps of 3 to 5 days of army type stuff. Where
Great, I had a fan question for that, so let's go.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, in the early days, I remember in that 89 year, we went down to the Canungra Army Barracks, right? And so it was like hell on a stick. You got stuck in the trip in just from the front gate. Before we even got in there, they dropped us off the bus, and they made us travel about, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 Ks up through these mountains to get back around to Canunga Army Barracks. We got lost. Embarrassingly so. And all the guys who were leading us got lost. And I said to Wayne, I said, Benny, I can get us out of here. I mean, like, I was a bush kid. I was like, I know exactly what I mean. I can just go back the way we came, and I'll get back out of here. No worries at all. And he said, well, just hang on a second, mate. And then next thing, some army guys jumped out of the bush and took us the way we were supposed to go. But it was pretty funny going down to the professional camp and getting lost in the bush. All these
good.
Yeah. And you're stuck in these little tents. It was stinking hot. They flogged you from sun up to sundown, and then woke you up in the middle of the night and flogged you again. Sleep deprivation and taking away food and things like that from you, and then because we all need those the survival of the three major things of food, water, and shelter, right? So take two of them away, it makes everybody come pretty close together.
Yeah.
And I swear those sorts of things, and Wayne was a genius at that sort of thing. And he would sometimes not even go.
Yeah.
But on those two, on 90, I think we did one in 90, 92, 89 and then 90. And then they didn't do another one until later on. But we used to do them every couple of years just to update everybody and get everyone on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah, so and they're wonderful. We did that in 2006. We did a 6-day camp in 2006. It was after preseason, in the start of preseason in the 2006 year when I was assistant coach to Wayne, and we were there with all the SAS guys, and I was a directing staff member, like an assisting directing staff member to those guys. And so every time that we've done those camps throughout the Broncos' career, that year they've always done well. May not have won the final, but got all the way to the finals and done really well through the year. And I think those things, they paved their way in gold. And I'm pretty sure that they cost a fair pretty penny in terms of the money that goes to. In the early days, they didn't cost much, but in the later days, I think they were, a lot of money.
Yeah. So I guess when you're under adversity on the field, the game's on the line, you've got nothing left in the tank. Those are those moments where those camps really pay their way.
Yeah, you're right. And I suppose the big one is like, if in those situations, it's more life or death situation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you do something wrong, and you drop something on your foot, you're gonna have a broken foot. Or if you fall off this the wrong way, you're gonna die. Or if you don't get through this tunnel the right way and it's underwater and you get caught up in there and someone's not able to help you out, you're going to drown. Yeah. So when it comes to going on the field after that point, the game's not so big anymore. Yeah. You know what I mean? Life's a little more, reality of what we're doing is we're playing sport, and it might hurt for a little bit. It might be that I say to people, and this is my analogy for players in defence, I say to people, put your hand up if you would sprint 40 metres to stop a try. And everyone puts their hand up. And then I say to people, righto, now just imagine it's the 79th minute of the game. You've got gravel rash on your backside from dragging it around for the last 79 minutes.
Yeah.
You're 2 points in front, and the team is just about to score. And they've got a guy that's running away and you're able to catch him, but you're going to have to go as hard as you can possibly go. Would you do that 40-metre sprint then? And everyone goes, yeah, put their hand up again. But then I play a game and I force them into that same situation, and I'll see at least 80% of people are not prepared to pay that one effort, that one price to stop a try from happening in a game. So you put in that perspective in terms of what your life experience is from those camps, then it certainly makes the attribute of what we've just done in a camp that much more real. This is one effort, and everybody can do one effort. So if you're not prepared to pay the price for that one effort for your teammate, for your club, then what are you prepared to pay a price for? And so that mentality, from my point of view, is what wins games. And that's how the Broncos, I believe, were successful in those years all through that time, is because of the fact that I used to say to people, you'd die for Wayne Bennett. I would have died for my teammates. No problem at all. No problem at all.
That's amazing. Awesome, man. That's so good. So good. What a great analogy. That's such a good story. That's awesome. So let's talk about Super League. You guys had an unbelievable season. The comp split in two. First of all, what's the feeling going into the split competitions? Like, is there any of that, I don't know, media pressure of, it's only a 10-team comp, and if you win the competition, no matter who it is, it's only a 10. Like, was there any of that crap going into the season, or did you guys just think, fuck it, it is what it is, let's go?
Yeah, no, we were in the mindset that we're gonna win this year as well. This 97 is going to win. We're winning this year, and and off the back of what we did, and I mean, and we still had like a 3 week tour of England because we had to play against the Super League teams over there for that World Club and end up playing in a final in Auckland against the Newcastle Mariners.
Yeah, the Hunter Mariners, that's right.
Yeah, so we played them in Auckland to win the World Club Challenge, so to speak. And I mean, I know there was only a small number of teams in it, but still, like there was some wonderful games played in that. And I reckon, I suppose, fortunate enough for me, I reckon that was probably one of my best years of play was in '97. And obviously, I was fortunate enough to get Player of the Year at the Broncos that year, and take the mantle off Alf for a change. He'd had it for the last 5 or 6 before that, I think.
Oh, wicked, man. So you guys, I think you finished top of the ladder. Again, another very dominant season by the Broncos. You know, there was a few clubs like the Raiders, the Sharks, Panthers were up there. The Bulldogs were pretty strong. But then there was kind of like a bit of a gap. You know, your Mariners and the Warriors were somewhere, you know, near the bottom, and the Cowboys, and they were all struggling a bit. But you guys just kind of blitzed everybody, really. And
Yeah,
you played Cronulla in the first round of playoffs, and then you played them again in the grand final. And
they beat the hell out of us in that first game.
yeah,
I can't remember what the score was, but it was a fair number of points against us, and everyone's going, "Oh, gee, the writing's on the wall for the Broncos," sort of thing. And the game, the grand final game, it was massive. It was the biggest number of people I'd ever been in front of. I think it was like 60 something thousand, 64,000 people at ANZ Stadium in Brisbane. That was where the off games was, right? And that was our home ground at the time. Because we'd moved away because of sponsorship from Lang Park, or Suncorp now as it's known. So the crowd was, I suppose you talk about during the year first, but I go to the highest point, mate. The grand final was just awesome because of that crowd.
Talk about it. You're against Cronulla. They've got like a back line with Andrew Enninghausen, Matt Rogers, David Peachy.
Belly was the other centre.
Right. And then you've got forward picks. You've got like Jason Stevens, Tarwin and Nico. Oh, mate, stacked side.
And you had Les Davidson. Who was the big old bloke with the burly looking head? Forgot his name. And then they had Sean Ryan back row. Then the blondie headed bloke was in the back row. I forgot his name too. Then
Nathan Long.
Yeah, Nathan Long, and then Dean Trister was. Sean Ryan, as I said. I can't remember that.
Side,
his name. Yeah, they had a really good team, mate. Yeah, really good team. I rated that Les Davidson really highly.
For sure.
Because of how tough he was as a player, but he just seemed like a straight up and down good bloke, you know.
Yeah.
He tried to
what's
that final.
So what's it like running out to 60-odd thousand people? The first ever Super League title on the line. Did you feel confident going in?
I did, and I suppose through those years at the Bronx, we expected to win every game. That was our mindset. The mindset that we were given really was that we were going to win every game that we played. Right. That was what our thought process was. And then a couple of times when you lose like that, like we had against Cronulla, it was a bit of a scary item. And actually, the grand final, Wendell had an absolute shocker. I felt for the poor bugger, but he passed the ball just outside our own try line, and then it got knocked. Or it didn't go to him. Went to Mick. Supposed to go to Mick DeVere, and it didn't go to him, and ended up opposition. I think it Michael Bell or Dean Bell. I can't remember which one it is. The centre scored. Their left side centre scored in the in just near the posts where the ball landed, and so we were down. I think we ended up being down just briefly, and then we bounced back and scored again after that.
Yeah, you kind of thrashed them in the end. Steve Renouf gets a hat trick in a grand final. There's nothing that boy can't do. He's a freak. What a game!
absolute freak. And we always said Pearl only ran as fast as he had to run. In front of anyone all day until he hit the try line and they'd tackle him.
How good.
He had this amazing balance, I thought, where he could shift his weight and move around someone so effortlessly from outside looking in. I mean, obviously it must have been working hard at it, but from us as individuals, we would see it and just go, "Oh my God, go Pearl," and then you stand at halfway and wait for him to come back.
That's right. It's so good. Actually, my favourite player back then, like I say, I was 13 when Super League was around. Wendell Sailor, man, he was my favourite player. He was unbelievable. Yeah, just I don't know why. He just loved scoring those tries and he was a freak.
He was fantastic, Wendell. I remember I hadn't seen him for a little while when I went across the rugby union, and he rang me up because he was thinking about coming across the rugby union as well, and he said, "What do you think? Which team to go to? Blah blah blah." And he said, "I've changed my name." And I said, "What do you mean you've changed your name?" He said, "Yeah, I'm International Dell or Television now."
I remember his first touch in rugby union for the Reds. He dropped the ball. He went to take a bit of a hit up and he fumbled it. It was so funny.
That's when they could wear those stupid bloody gloves too. Was he wearing gloves that time?
Yeah. I don't know. What was called gloves fashion? That came out for a while.
Yeah, they did for a while. Well,
Super League.
He's definitely a wonderful player, Wendell, for the Broncos and obviously League and Union International. I wished he would have been able to win a final I said to him, "You should have come to the Brumbies, mate. You would have got a grand final at the Brumbies for sure."
Man.
But he was keen to stay in Brisbane and be with the Reds and not have to go too far about changing codes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair enough too. So you guys beat the Sharks. You're premiers again. You've got yourself another premiership ring, even though people would say, "Oh, yeah, but it's only a 10-team comp." But like, it is what it is, right? You've won the premiership and the only Super League premiership. Like, it's a great pocket of history. I think it's amazing. Like,
mate, I love it. And look, and as I said, that was probably one of my better years of playing rugby league. And then when we got back in the competition in '98, like we go from '97, and it was fantastic. Like, that same feeling from that, the first couple of in '92 and '93, you just can't replicate that feeling of being able to work your backside off, won and done so well in the competition, and then back it up the following year. And I suppose that's probably when that enthusiasm came for the '98 season, was from the '97 season, because we played the Bulldogs at the end of that year in '98, and I think the big thing with that was that when we came together to play Newcastle, who won '97 for the NRL New South Wales Rugby League, we had their number during the year. So they were saying, that, "Oh yeah, they won last year and you guys won last year. Well, then who wins this year out of that to be the winners out of both comps?" And we thoroughly accepted it.
You did indeed, and you did it kind of comfortably in the end. But before I talk about that grand final, you made your first rep side in the Super League Queensland Tri-Series weirdo competition that they put together with New Zealand, New South Wales and Queensland. What was it like getting your first rep jersey, and playing in that Tri-Series?
Yeah, it was wonderful. To be honest, as I said, like with the '97 season with the Broncos, I was really enjoying my footy, and obviously I was playing pretty good footy for me to get selected in that team. And look, obviously it wasn't a big difference in change in terms of we had the same head coach in Wayne, and then all the same strappers and same trainers, and so the individuals were very familiar to me. And then obviously the majority of the team was Broncos as well, because we were playing so well that season. And look, The team that beat us in the final from New South Wales I thought it was a pretty good team as well. It would have matched any other state of origin team that New South Wales has put out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I meant to tell you this before, but is that they talk about, or someone said in a question from one of your fans said, ask him about would the Broncos now keep up with Penrith, and the same question was asked of Alan Langer about Melbourne Storm. Would the Broncos, our team, 98 team Broncos, match it with Melbourne Storm? And Alf said, oh yeah, no, we'd win. And they said, well, how much? And he said, 4 to 8 points. And the reporter said, oh, why so many points? He said, well, most of us are nearly 60 now, so.
Oh, that's gold. That's gold. Shot it. Oh, shot out for you.
I saw it, and I seriously, I nearly wet myself laughing because I just see Alp saying that. He's such a clown. And
funny.
Go back to 97 state of origin. Like as I said before, like I was playing pretty good footy, and I thought it was one of my better years of playing league throughout my whole career. And I was given a lot more leadership and ownership in terms of the team. And I used to run the defence. As a player, I was like a defence leader, and then because Gilly had left at that time, and I'd sort of taken over, and it was my sort of job to, on field sort of run the defence, and because I would, once you start to understand what you have to and not have to do defensively, it's quite easy for you to read that from the opposite side of the field. Obviously, that what the opposite team are doing, so the left side or right side are doing when you're defending in the middle. So, and quite often, a lot of it comes back to the simple things in the game, like actual line speed. We all worked out now, or everyone's worked out now with regards to teams that, we want to slow the breakdown or the tackle down by 4-second tackles is a really good time frame. So if you get a 4+ second tackle in rugby league, everybody's enough time to get back on side and get off the line and make tackle again, so that you're limiting meters from the opposition, right? So that being said, that came in this year in 97, because it became that much more things you could look at in the game. And then the process of they used to call it analyzer. I think they still do call it analyzer. That breaks the game down, and so obviously back then it was still videotape and stuff like that, but we watched a lot more of it, and I watched a lot more of games, so that I had my detail and information for opposition teams as well coming up to them was huge. And and then your standard plays that they're bringing out, you've already seen them, like, so you can just plan for it, and then that way it gained so much more respect in terms of what it was for, the analysis of the game. So I think that was probably one of the places where it started to happen, and we got better, quite easily through that, that's why I reckon the 97 and 98 years, although the team was pretty amazing in those years, like the quality of the players that were there, I thought that that those things did pave its way from that time.
Absolutely, man. So you said you played in that grand final of Queensland, New South Wales, of that tri-series, and it was like went to extra time.
Yeah, 104 minutes. Well, 108 minutes. I can't remember.
Crazy.
Yeah,
what's the fitness at the end of that?
Yeah, well, there was guys going down with cramp left, right, and centre, and I'd never had a cramp in my career until that game. And I got 2 minutes to go, and I got a cramp in my calf, and I was like, "Geez, I've never had a cramp. I need to pump some juice into me here."
Yeah.
Anyway, but 104 minutes, I think it was, or 108. I can't remember exactly. But that's a long time.
That's a long time, man.
And then Nolly Goldthorpe slots a field goal.
Yep.
Noel lives at Noosa on the Sunshine Coast now. I see him every now and then, but he he was a good little player in his day, and obviously he was with St George.
92, 93.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
a little bit of payback there for old Nolly.
Yeah, yeah, poor fella. Then he got stitched up to go to the Adelaide Rams by Kevin Campion and Wayne Bennett.
Yeah, but he went there. He went there and he got paid really good money.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like Luke Prittis, because Luke Prittis was at Adelaide Rams as well. And when Adelaide Rams became defunct, Luke Prittis was on this massive contract, like 350 or 400,000, because he was down there. But then when he came to us, News Limited just kept paying it because it was not a variation of the contract. He just went from one place to the next. So and then he got to a grand final in '98.
Cool, eh? Yeah. Same thing happened to Terry Hermanson. He was signed with the Adelaide Rams, but then they went under, and that's how we came to the Warriors. And they just said, "Oh, we'll just pay you the same contract, and off you go." Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah. So a lot of guys did well out of that time frame. It was good.
Absolutely. So let's carry on talking about the Origin while we're on it. So 1998, one of the greatest Origin magic miracle comebacks. Go Queensland, how good. You're in that match, game one, and a 24-23 victory to the Maroons. It's your first Origin. Like, what an Origin, like with the comp back together. And you guys are down with like 7 minutes to go by a point. Rod Wishart makes a break. Martin Lang, of all people, runs them down. But then Joey Johnson, Freddie, they combine. The ball goes out wide to ET, who puts Menzies over for a try. You're down by 5. Joey Johns misses the goal, unbelievably, because he should have got that one. It wasn't too hard.
Yeah.
It's Joey. I mean, come on, he's the best.
Yeah.
and then the miracle play happens with like 2 minutes to go. I think you're in your own end. Is it Freddie or Joey puts in a grubber? Shane Webke gets down and catches it, and then you can explain the rest. Do you remember what happened after that?
I remember. So Kevy, I think Kevy was integral in it because he took it down the short side first. I don't know who it got to. It might have been Pearl. It might have been Pearl on the right edge. He got a bit of a line break, got tackled, and then Kevy went down that short side again the second time, and then it went back to the middle of the field. And it was a tackle about, I don't know, maybe 30 meters, 40 meters out. And then Kevy took it down the short side again and fed the ball to Tony Carroll, who had replaced me on the field.
Okay.
Thank God he was there. I probably was way back on the halfway line with my hands on my knees. It was a great try. Tons of scoring that try was amazing. Amazing.
The little piece that also adds to that is you're on, like I said, Webke grabs this grubber on your own try line to stop the Blues getting a repeat 6. They actually stayed in the field of play. But then Kevy Walters chipped over the top.
That's
so like
right.
Ben Eichen, about 40 meters gained off one play.
Yeah.
And then the rest happened as you described it. So you went the length of the field.
Yeah.
And score. I couldn't believe it when I was watching that. I was like, wow, what a comeback. You get the goal, you'll win by a point. Crazy.
I popped a rib. I popped 2 ribs in that game in a tackle. I was making the tackle and I popped the ribs. So it must have been fairly decent contact. But and so I came off the field in that second half, and then that's when tons of Tony Carroll went on. Thank God he'd gone, because you never know what might have happened otherwise.
Yeah. Good Canterbury lad, old Punza. Yeah, man. So what's it like, mate, playing an Origin? Like, the whole comp's back together. So you do have the best of the best absolutely smashing each other. I mean, what a way to bring back Origin for a joint comp, 24-23.
I thought it was amazing that year. It's very much it's a little bit different to a grand final game because of the fact of the enormity of it. Like it's huge, right? And you got two teams from 2 states that love to hate each other. And I suppose if you take the emotional side out of it, for us as players, the emotional side is only really just before the game, where you're like, oh right, we are playing New South Wales tonight. So the intensity level has in your mindset and your brain has to go up a notch, and I think that's why State of Origin is so acceptable from the general public, and worldwide as well, because of the fact that the intensity level goes up for certain stages of the game, and that's how those moments, like those tries, like that is it what's his name, Mark
Coin?
Mark Coyne. Mark
Oh,
Coyne try. That try, the Wally Lewis try in the water when he's the Greg Dowling try when Wally Lewis hits the crossbar and it bounces back and Greg Dowling catches it. Yeah. So like moments like that, like that's the intensity that it has to go to. And you see some of those big hits on, Spud Carroll or Marty Bella getting beat up, or Andrew G getting flogged.
What about Gordon Tallis ragdolling Brett Hodgson over the sideline? Those are good times.
That's what that's the next level of intensity, right? So that's what it is. But for somebody who hasn't, if you haven't experienced that, it's out of this world. Yeah, a little bit immune to it, because we, as players, you get to experience a lot of those things a little bit more than most people. But in the moment, when you're there and then, it's exhilarating, and there's no other word for it. Yeah,
it's so good to watch. Honestly, it's the best. And I love grand finals. I love Origin, and obviously I love Test matches because it's just the best of the best, and it's just another level. The intensity, the hits, the pace of the game. There's so much riding on it. It's incredible. Like, it's so good.
Oh, it's amazing.
I love it. Yeah, man. So you guys won the series. How good's that? Take that, New South Wales. And then Broncos go to the grand final. Now, were you injured for the grand final? Because you didn't play in this one.
No, I always got suspended.
Is that what happened? You got suspended?
Yeah, we were playing against Melbourne Storm, and it was I think it was like the semi-final leading in. It was like the quarter final. Okay. Brett Kamali was halfback for Melbourne, and I dived at him when he was going for to put up a infield kick, and it was near coming into our try line sort of thing. And at the time, I didn't think it was that bad, but I looked at it like only a few years ago, and I was like, "Holy hell, it was pretty bad." I dived at him with my arms out in front of me to the point where my forearm comes across his neck and chest.
Decapitate him.
Yeah. And then knocked over, obviously, and I end up getting 3 weeks for it. And so the grand final day, I'm on the sideline, and on the other sideline there's a bloke by the name of Barry Ward for Bulldogs.
Yep.
Barry both missed the grand final through suspension.
Okay.
And look, the story. Well, it only just got brought up to me the other day again. A story about Tony Carroll in the grand final.
Yeah.
He went out because he replaced me because he was the young bloke coming through, right?
Yeah.
And he went out in that first half, and he was. I was embarrassed for him because he wasn't Tony Carroll as we know him, right? Like he'd just gone into his shell, and then, I don't know whether he had a mental lapse or not. But Wayne said to me on the way up the tunnel, or it might have been as I got into the shed, said, "You had a chat to Tunza," and I went, "Yeah, no worries." Me being me, I was absolutely disgusted in how he played in that first half.
Okay.
And I let him know about it full on, right? So I was like, I was right in his face, and I said, if you go out in that second half and play like that busted ass that came out in the first half, I said one of our strappers' name's Tony Spencer, his name's Springer. I said, I'll grab Springer's scissors. I will run on the field. I will can stab you with them. And I was heated. Right? I'm up in his face, and Wayne's looking over at me, and I saw Wayne looking at me, and then I just patted him on the back, and I turned around and walked away, because I was genuinely upset, and
Right.
and Wayne could see it. Anyway, and Tunza knew about it too. Tunza wrote that story in his book, that I threatened him with a pair of scissors, and definitely true. But I don't think I would have ever done it. But I heard Wayne was asked about it at some stage after Tunza's book came out, and he said something along the lines of, I'm pretty sure Peter would have said something similar to that, and I'm pretty sure Tunza being Tunza would have believed him.
Oh mate, that's a great story. Well, he had your spot and he was playing like shit, so I guess I guess he deserved it.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it was my that was my job. That was where I was supposed to be, and I deserved to be on the field that time, and I couldn't be there through one reason or another. And so me behind that, I'm like, right, well, look, this is this guy taking over my spot that needs to come up a level. Well, thank God he did. Like, to his credit, like, he was the best player in the second half.
He scored a try, didn't he?
Scored two, I think.
Yeah. I remember he went quite well. Wendell Sailor got one. Campo got one.
Yeah.
And pretty.
Campo, definitely. He played a great second half. I don't know if it was me yelling or me saying that to him, or him just turn it back on, because I think he just turned it off that first half.
Yeah. So was it quite bittersweet for you? Obviously, Broncos are premiers, but you missed the big game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely bittersweet. And it still gives me pangs of pain, think about it. But when it's all said and done, like, it's like the '92 season, I didn't get in the field. I felt I deserved to be on the field, and I didn't get on the field for one reason or another. But my contribution to that team throughout that year, I played, as you say, 13 or 14 games for the year. The next year I played 18 plus in '93, and only got about 10 or 15 minutes in the grand final. '97 I played the whole game, and obviously became the player that I wanted to be, and I was a player of the year for the Broncos. And then '98 I missed it through a little bit of a miscalculation, or maybe I just wanted to hit him in the neck. Not really. Brett Kamula is a pretty good guy, and I definitely didn't want to injure anyone by any measure at all. But me putting pressure on kickers back then, it used to be acceptable for the fact that you could hit them as they're kicking the ball, and I still think it's a gutless act to take that away from the players, because if you're in the process of kicking the ball, you are fair game.
Yeah.
As long as they're not in the air, obviously. So let's fix that rule up. Mind you, though, I suppose a few halfbacks did get injured in that time frame as well, from hitting late while they were in the air. And I suppose that's where the rule change came from. I know Joey was an advocate for it because of the fact that he was a halfback. And he had the voice because he had the Channel 9 gig and whatever else he was doing. So it is what it is. But personally, I prefer the old style, but obviously put some restrictions on it.
Yeah, man. Okay, so '99, the Broncos had a bit of a mare. You guys just couldn't get going to start the season. I think
we
one
lost
win out of
but
you had a win and a draw out of your first 10 games or something. But then you went on a real hot streak to finish the season.
Yeah.
Scraped into eighth, but then you got pumped by Cronulla, season over.
Yeah.
And then you found yourself leaving the club. So what made you want to leave the club and switch over to rugby union?
Well, it's funny that so I'd been at the Broncos 11 years in total. At that point, I'm a 17-year-old, and I'd sort of grown up there as a man, and I'd already had 2 children by well, 98 season, 99 comes around. I've got 2 kids and my wife, and and I was thinking to myself, if they can get rid of Wally Lewis when they got rid of Wally Lewis, then no one is safe at this team in this club.
Yep.
So you're only a beggar to your own performance. So if you're not performing, and there was young guys coming through left, right, and centre. I can't remember exactly who they were, like maybe Dane Carlaw or Petro, and I know Petro there a while before that. But anyway, I can't remember exactly who was coming through, but excuse me. So I was thinking to myself, look, because Alf and Andrew Jew, who I was pretty tight with, were going to Warrington.
Yep.
And they said, Ryno, because I spoke to Warrington as well, and they said, well, we'll offer you a contract. And I said, look, I'm an hour about it. I wasn't sure what to do. And because I played rugby union, and Steve Nance, who was one of our trainers over our time frame, he was with the Wallabies at the time. And he was training Queensland-based Wallabies players out of the same gym that we were at. And so I ran into one of those guys who went to the same school as me as Downlands in Toowoomba, Downlands College. So his name is Brett Robinson. He was the Brumbies' first captain. And he was the Australian number 7 at the time, on and off. Him and Dave Wilson, and can't remember who was in New South Wales at the time. Might have been Poitevin still. Anyway, I digress. But so I ran into Robbo and a few other guys that I went to school with. So we were fortunate enough. We had Tim Horan and Garrick Morgan on our side when we were boarding school, and so we were only beaten two games out of 2 years that we played together. Anyway, so we the opportunity came up, and Robbo said to me, "Oh, look, if you're keen at all, ever, just give us a call about changing over." Okay. And so I ended up calling him. He gave me his number. I called him. Next thing, I get a phone call from Eddie Jones, and he says he's coming to Brisbane to meet me. So my wife, being my wife, she organised this unbelievable seafood meal, straight out of the Moreton Bay. Moreton Bay bugs and crab and all the beautiful food that you have in Queensland. Eddie's there for 15 minutes. Basically says, "Yeah, you're good to go," and turns around and walks out after my wife spent a half an hour spending to doing all this food for the guys' arrival. Anyway, so I thought that was a bit strange, but then I thought, obviously he's a businessman. He wants to get going. He's got other things to do. So I said, right, well, look, I want to go down and take my wife down and have a look around Canberra, and so we did that. We were fortunate enough, the guy who took us around, a bloke by the name of Ray Nickel, just a really good guy. He took us around Canberra, and it was, the end of the story is I ended up going to the Brumbies for my first year at the end of 1999. Didn't have an off. Again, I did my old routine, went back to a couple of weeks off, and then straight back into training again. I trained with a boxing guy then at the time. I ended up going down there a little bit too light. I ended up being about 94, 95 kilos. I was fit as, but went down there really light. And I remember my first training session down there, they said, they used to call a hard session because the head trainer's name was Rex. His name was Rex Livingston. And they said, "Oh, we're going to get a Rexing today." And I said, "Oh, you're right. Oh, that's a hard session, is it?" And they said, "Yeah, really hard." And I did this session. I went into Eddie Jones's office after training, and I said, "Eddie," I said, "we do more in warm-up than you guys do in your hardest session training." And I said, "That's embarrassing." I said, "We need to bring the level of fitness up to where it needs to be." And I felt sorry later on because poor old Stu Livingston got ridden for the next 2 years, or while Eddie was still in Canberra, because I said that. And look, to the guy's credit, he came up with the goods, and we end up being the premier team along with Crusaders and Sharks in
Yeah,
that frame of the 2000, 2001, 2002.
absolutely. And you had yourself and other league convert, Andrew Walker, playing together. You won a comp 2001 with the Brumbies. How good
Yeah.
was that? And what was it like hanging out with Walks at training and playing with him?
Oh, look, when Walks turned up, he was awesome. He was
Yeah,
absolutely awesome. And look,
the gun player.
oh, he was amazing, mate. But
Yeah,
Walks, he has like Walks' biggest problem back then was he had so many family and so many different people in the region that
yeah,
he would sometimes get caught up doing other things, and he might be a bit lax at training, and that's probably another thing. Like Eddie Jones said to me one day, he said, "Ryno, what do you think about Walks? Like he's missed a few sessions." And I said, Eddie, do any of the players really care if Walks misses a few sessions, as long as he turns up on the weekend? If he's there the day before the game for that training session and then the game day, does anyone care? And he goes, probably not. And I said,
yeah,
why should you care then? So he let him get away with a few things, family wise
yeah,
that whether they happened or not happened, I don't know.
yeah.
But Walks, a true gentleman. I love him.
A great
My
man. Yeah,
my funny story with Walks. They put me. We were going to South Africa in 2000 and must have been 2001,
yeah,
and we're going to South Africa, and we had to go to Sydney the night before so that we can catch the early flight, right?
yeah,
And to Joburg, and so they put Walks in with roomies with me, and they're like, "Yeah, well, I know you must just make sure Walks gets to bed." And I'm like, "He's a grown man; he can look after himself." And so Walks had a few of his South Sydney mates or a relative that were close by. He's
yeah.
disappeared, turned up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, legless, and knocking on the door. He didn't have a key to get in. I don't even know how he found the room. He was that drunk. And I'm like, oh my God, they've put me with this guy to look after him. And I've let him get away because we played the night before, right? And
Yeah.
and so so I've straight away got onto the team manager, Phil Thompson. He was a great. He's still in rugby now. He's at the Brumbies CEO. He's a great guy and a really good administrator. And so he basically came to the room, and we filled Walks with coffee, water, and
Yeah.
put him in a shower, and then as it got to the point where we had to get him to the plane, Walks was at a level that he basically just wanted to lie down and sleep then. So we took him to the airport lounge and let him lay down and have a sleep. And then we just
Yeah.
walked him on the plane as long as we had someone next to him the whole time. He was sweet. He was sweet. But I thought for a minute there he was going to lose his job. Like, it was that close. So I'm glad we got him to the plane, that's for sure. And a character, like, seriously, no, I've got other stories, but I'll keep them off. I'll keep them off.
Fair play, fair play. No, it's funny stuff. So you got the premiership. You've won an NRL title. You've won a Super 12 title. Like that's pretty amazing feat, man. Like you've got to be pretty proud when you look back at your career and think, you know what, I actually did something pretty special there.
Yeah, look, I didn't realize it at the time, but then there was I don't know, someone come up to me and said there's been 4 players that have done won grand finals in NRL and Super Rugby, and they said, and you were the first, and I was like,
Yeah.
I said, was I really? And they went, yeah, and I said, yeah, right. I was like, yeah, fair enough, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wouldn't
no,
it be Brad
you got,
Thorne?
yeah, so you got
Brad
Will Chain,
Thorne, Sonny Bill?
Tony Bill,
Wow. Awesome.
yeah. Yeah, so there's a select group that's in that that have gone down that path, and I'm fortunate to be one of them. In all honesty, I'm very lucky with the teams that I was involved with. The Broncos in the '90s were amazing. And then the Brumbies in the 2000s were amazing again.
Yeah.
And I'm happy I've got to contribute. And Eddie Jones has said a few times, and so I really do respect the fact that he said what he has said about me coming across from rugby league to rugby union, that I brought a work ethic over that he adopted and the team adopted at the Brumbies, and then obviously the organisation adopted that process of, hard work first. And, we all, Wayne Bennett used to say all the time, losers have meetings, winners have parties. And we used to all like to party. So we wanted to have more parties than meetings.
Absolutely.
You'll even look at teams now, that are losing, how many meetings they must go through is incredible. Sometimes the coaches have nearly got to go, right, let's pull the brakes on the meeting side of it here and stop beating ourselves up. Let's start to get positive about what we're doing, that we are doing positively, and then take us forward going forward. Because until you do that, you're going to keep going backwards unless you change a majority of either your staff or a good selection of your players. And you can't do that every year because of the fact that it's just not sustainable financially.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I think it's very fair to say you've had an unbelievable career. It's actually quite amazing what you've achieved, and being in two very successful clubs and two different codes, and it's just amazing, man. So thank you heaps for sharing that with us. But we're going to finish with a couple of fan questions. So you already answered a couple of them, but Shem Brokenshire wants to know, how much chance do you give the 2024 Broncos of winning the comp?
Well, I think if they get all their players back, it's always really tough with the Broncos through till State of Origin season. So when State of Origin is over, I used to base ourselves, with any team I'm involved with NRL, base yourself off the fact that after State of Origin, if we've done well, then we'll have more players in State of Origin. But if we haven't done well, we won't have as many players as in State of Origin. But that quite often contributes to the State of Origin then as well. If it hasn't been good, the least numbers that are in the State of Origin now, the Broncos, then the worse we seem to be going. So if you go really well, and then the players that are coming up, they quite often call them the baby Broncos. When guys step up into those roles, that if they do step up, the team's going well enough that those guys already have the ability, because they've been in and out, and they already know the roles. So if the team can sort of stay on top and be up in a contention when it gets to the finals, I think the Broncos are a real good chance, a really good chance. I'd like to say that if they got to the grand final after last year's effort and they played against Penrith again, I reckon they get them. That's my opinion.
There we go. Lock it in. Lock it in. Right. Steve McEwen wants to know, which code is better and why is it rugby league?
I love both codes, and I really enjoyed my time in both codes. I probably preferred to play league more than union, only because I got back to it a little bit, probably late, in terms of my development as a sorry, I got a grandchild here in the background. Got back to it a little bit late in terms of the development of my game in rugby union. But I thoroughly enjoyed my time in rugby, and I actually probably have more rugby guys that I'm in touch with now than I am more league guys, but that's no detriment to either group. It's just that's how it sort of panned out, politically correct there, I have to say.
Okay. So Frank Endicott, he wanted to ask about the time Matthew Ridge caught you on the jaw with a right hook in the 1997 World Club Challenge semi-final against the Warriors.
Yeah.
Who got the biggest shock?
Great pleasure. Frank had great pleasure in recanting that same story to me when he came over to the Broncos when I was there in 2006 as assistant coach. And he took great pleasure in saying that to me. Yeah, I did. I got sat on my ass. I did bounce back up. And so he didn't knock me out, which is a good thing, but he did sit my ass. It was similar to the scenario with Brett Camorley. I went at the kicker and I think he thought it was a bit too aggressive and came at me, but it came at me from this way, and I've gone like this to one punch back towards him, and then he's just hit me and sat me on the butt. And I was embarrassed by the fact that I was sat on my ass by a fullback, for one.
Yeah.
Two, then it was Matthew Ridge as well, because he's a genuine smart ass.
Yeah, I
He was a good footballer. He was a very good footballer. And in actual fact, Frano Boddicker played for the All Blacks. That's the guy that played for the Wigan. He was the Wigan Six. He was an All Black. I think he played a few games of the All Blacks in years, like about 5 or 6 years prior to that. So, I think Ridgie probably could have been an All Black if he'd have played rugby union.
Yeah, man. All right, so let's finish off with a couple of my fun questions. What is your favourite TV show of all time?
Favorite TV show of all time? I think I've seen every MASH.
Good.
I mean, you're not old enough to know that that show is.
Well, mate, I was brought up on Hogan's Heroes, MASH, and all that stuff. Dad's Army, I've seen it all. I love it. It's great.
Right. So, MASH and also the Two Ronnies. They were my favourite shows when I was a kid. Yeah. But currently,
brilliant.
That's my other favourite show.
Awesome, man. Okay, so if you're on death row, what would your final meal be?
I honestly believe it would be, I don't know, something simple like steak and salad.
Yep, too easy.
I'm a butcher's son, mate. I grew up eating meat, and I'd still support the meat industry.
Yeah, right. I do too. It's all good. All right, man. Thank you so much for coming back in the day with me on the Point of Different Rugby League podcast. It's been an absolute privilege and it's been heaps of fun, man. We've talked some good stuff. It's been great.
No, awesome, Dave. I really appreciate your time, mate, and happy to contribute to your show.
Thanks, man. It's been so cool. So thank you everyone also for listening and watching out there, and get on the Facebook group, Point of Different Rugby League. Heaps of legends. Peter Ryan's in there. It's fantastic stuff. So again, thanks, Peter, for coming on, and we'll see you all next time for kickoff.
Cheers, Dave.
Full time.